Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Shalom, everyone. I am the Chief Magician of Mystery Babylon. Welcome to my holy channel. This is a part 2 to probably one of my most powerful series on my entire channel, where we are discussing Holy Magic. And I want to begin here, which is a very slight introduction on Abraham Abulafia. Abraham Abulafia, as I'm hoping all of you know, was a grandmaster of grandmasters. This simply cannot be emphasized. This Jewish Maccabeo was probably the most initiated Maccabeo of the past 1700 years or so. And he is in heir to the ancient Israeli order of the Essenes, right? All this very ancient esoteric knowledge and wisdoms that the Essenes possessed, nobody knows what it is. No one is in possession of it other than us Jewish grandmasters and Maccabelim. What makes Abraham Abulafia so special is that he's the only Jewish grandmaster for the past 1700 years that had access to all of this very ancient esoteric knowledge and wisdom. And as a result, this makes him probably the most initiated, literally, this is no emphasis, no exaggeration, literally the most initiated and greatest of all Grandmaster Holy Magicians. There's no one higher than Abraham Abulafia. And he was in possession of the entire complete system of Holy Magic. And much of his works and books, which Baruch Hashem we still possess to this day, thanks to the careful preservation by all of the Grandmasters, go very deeply into detail in detailing and outlining this complete powerful holy system of Holy Magic. It's very, very, very powerful. Simply cannot be emphasized enough. Now, the problem that we have in this last generation is that, or at least for the past few generations, is that we haven't really had any individuals who have been powerful Grandmaster Holy Magicians outside of the Mashiachim like Shabbatai Zvi, Yaakov Rinka, etc. But outside of these divine beings that have reincarnated in the past aeon, outside of them, there hasn't really been any powerful Grandmaster Holy Magician at the same level as Abraham Abulafia that has come out and written books at the same level Abraham Abulafia has revealed this system, especially in the past generation. If we just focus on in the past generation, there hasn't really been any Grandmaster Holy Magician that has come out in the open saying, you know, I'm a Grandmaster Holy Magician, let me reveal to you the system, let me talk to you about all of my experiences, you know, etc. There hasn't been. All we have, if you go online, if you go on the internet, you know, if you go to Israel, right, here in the US, right, there's nobody that's teaching this system of holy magic. There's nobody that's teaching it that has walked the path, that has walked the walk. There's a great problem. We don't have these holy men that have great power. Where's the power? As my rabbi always says, where's the holy power? Where is the power? We're lacking power. We're lacking a lot of power. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist because it's out there, but we're lacking a lot of power. So then that brings me now, today with me right now, I have a very true Grandmaster Holy Magician. I can give my divine seal upon this Holy Zadik that indeed he is a Grandmaster Holy Magician. And what makes him very special is that I've gotten to know him recently, and he is almost like a spitting image of Abraham Abulafia and what he teaches in his works. This Zadik, who is a Grandmaster Holy Magician of Israel, is in possession of this system of Holy Magic, and he's walked the walk. And he can speak and teach on these very sublime matters, and it's very rare. To know and find a person like this, it's like mission impossible. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. There's even more tzaddikim on top of this out there that exist, but they're in other. They exist on other levels of the earth, and some of them are still hidden. But because we're now in this last generation, very slowly, these powerful holy tzaddikim are starting to rise. People such as myself and this holy magician and others. And so I'm very pleased and I'm very honored to have with me this very powerful Zadik and Grandmaster Holy Magician who has my divine seal. He has my divine seal that indeed he's a Grandmaster Holy Magician. I've gotten to know him. So trust me when I say he is a Grandmaster Holy Magician. Cannot be emphasized enough. And as I interview him, I'm going to interview him here very shortly. As I interview him, those of you listening who are very closely affiliated and with Abraham Abulafia and have been initiated into his holy esoteric systems will more than know and understand and have eyes to see and ears to hear that indeed this individual that I'm speaking with is indeed a Grandmaster Holy Magician. So, without further ado, let's bring him in. So, behold, Yira, who I've recently interviewed. But I guess we didn't get very deep in the interview in revealing and confirming that Yira is a Grandmaster Holy Magician of Israel. So, today, what we're going to do is Yira is going to teach and reveal the different levels and progression of this system of Holy Magic. Now, you have to bear in mind, there's much that can be said. This is meant to be a summary. We don't have all the time in the world, so we're going to try to summarize as briefly but as powerfully as possible to summarize and give you these very powerful holy keys so that you listening or holy tzaddikim can begin your holy initiation into this very powerful secret system of Holy Magic. So with that said, I'll let you, Yira, begin with the first stage or level of this holy initiation.
I'd like to begin by getting into the source of what we'll be touching upon. And this is, in our last interview, we had discussed a dream. And in the dream, I woke before a cloud of darkness, and a voice spoke out of this cloud of darkness from which innumerous eyes had opened and had instructed me in the nature of angels. And of course, such a claim at that time is momentous to say the very least. And in that video, I had touched upon the fruits, yet I had not shown these particular fruits. And as we had discussed recently about this system, as I was instructed to shew these things. And so that is what we shall do here today. And for this reason, we'll begin with the very first papyri. I would like to mention at the very first pressing of this very first papyri here, which is laminated, all of the power in the print shop had went out, short-circuited. Now, I carry that tradition in as to what happened that day because the student that was with me is no longer alive, but was there to bear witness to that act. I awoke before the darkness, under the moonlight. From amidst the darkness opened eyes. Without number I fell to my face, as one dead. This is the fear of the Lord. Listen, child, shew these things I shall show you, that you may see. The Son of Man shall be lifted by the hands of the angels. Listen close to the nature. Of the seraphim, these weigh the spirits. And these were like blazing ones. Now, of course, we know this in the attribute of Shin, but we will be analyzing it from the attribute of Samek. Placed here, it has 7 letters, the middle letter here being Aleph. This is going to be very important, as we'll soon see. There's 3 to one side and 3 to another side. Samek denotes cycle and supports. Ayin denotes external. Resh denotes the form. Aleph denotes the variables as well as air. Fe denotes the throat. Yod denotes spiritual sustenance. And Mem denotes liquids and solids. And so these first seraphim were responsible for taking in air, solidic sustenance, and liquid sustenance in by means of the throat, and then converting that, abstracting the spiritual vitality, accepting that which is to be accepted, and rejecting that which is to be rejected. As we breathe in air, we so too breathe out. As we take in liquids, we so too secrete. As we take in solids, we so too secrete. So this very first angel was said to weigh the spirits. And they have an active and passive force. Their passive force is passively sustaining the body. And their active force is in actively healing the body. In the case that you were to have a wound on your body or an open sore, the reconstruction process comes not by your active consciousness. It's by the act of these angels, which occurs with or without us being aware of it. So this very first angel required the rectification of the atmospheric sustenance that we provide to our forms, the solidic sustenance that we provide to our forms, and the liquid sustenance that we provide to our forms. To simplify this, these are the things that we breathe. Things like smoking, things like vaping or inhaling any kind of foreign sustenance are things that will become harmful to the body. The same thing with liquids, any kind of alcohol and things like that that destroy the body, they cause harm. And the same thing with solids, eating all of this processed food and different things like that cause harm to the body. Now, as I had said before, these are angels, and so angels are unbiased. They're neither good nor are they evil in this instance. These seraphim here only work with what they're given.
So this is really important, listeners. What Gita has just explained, he's explained this very, very geniusly as a true mystic. For those of you who might not understand, to simplify, we need to understand that all of the tzaddikim are surrounded by divine entities. You can call them what you want, angels, seraphim. The point is, all the true tzaddikim are surrounded by divine entities. Some of these divine entities are linked to our body, and this is why it's very important that we protect and maintain the health of our temple, which is the body. Our holy temple is the body. And this is why we see that if you read the works of all of the ancient mystics, the holy true saints and mystics, these are the chief disciples of Yeshua HaMashiach, or the chief disciples of HaMashiach Arizal. They all kept a very special diet. They will all tell you in their books to maintain a very healthy diet. They did not eat meat. They maintained a diet of legumes, vegetables, fruits, etc. A very plant-based diet during the week, during the impure weekdays. Now, on the holy days is when they ate meat and maybe drink wine. So they're on a very special diet. Why? Why is it that you read that all of these ancient holy mystics and saints, these chief disciples of divine men, why do they have these very special key diets? It's because they understand the supernal principles of spirituality and holy initiation, and how vital the diet and the body is, and what a momentous role it plays in holy initiation and spiritual ascension, etc. So this is what Gira is getting at. You can continue, Gira.
Absolutely. And we can see this in the Torah. This is true to the kosher diet. There were reasons why they expressed certain things and forbade other things. So this first classification of angels were called seraphim. They were said to weigh the spirit. And continuing here, after this first rectification, which has to do with a finite form, being the body, this is the first stage of rectification, the diet.
This is very important to repeat. We are delineating and enumerating the different stages and levels of holy initiation, specifically holy initiation into holy majich. As I've stated in other videos, I've touched upon the kosher diet and it being in relation and a function of holy initiation into holy majich. So we are delineating and enumerating these levels and stages. What we have just enumerated is the very first stage, which has to do with the maintenance of your temple, your body, and your diet.
Absolutely. The spirit then weighed is then measured by the cherubim who carry the spirit. When one rises, all rise. When one moves, all move. This here too was expanded into 7 letters, 3 on one side, 3 on another side, with the middle letter here being Vav. So why were they say to have measured? Because of Chet. Now, why is Vav in the middle here? Well, the sound of Vav, as denoted in the interview, Vo, which in English signifies V, which is the tip of the nail, and denotes intention like love, vindictive, vengeance. These are all forceful acts of intent. O was the top of the nail. We see it in the word door. Dalet was a path without walls. And so O was bound from one side of the path without walls, O to the other side of the path without walls, and Resh was the form. U were the things united by the nail, and it denotes to unite, as denoted in the previous video. We saw it in the word cup. C means to carry, U is to unite, P is to the mouth, but we also see it in the word unite and union and many other words. In fact, even denoting another person and saying you is denoting that union. W were the many things bound by the nail and denotes many bindings. We see it in the word what, who, where, when, denoting a connection between two things. We see it in the word water, which denotes many bindings, a well, many bindings, and many other things. Now, this is very important here because as the ox tills the earth, our body tills the earth. As the lion signifies strength and is a symbol of emotion, so too do we experience in the emotions. As man was made in the image of, our spirit was made in the image of. As the eagle soars, our soul soars and is in need of rectification. Those who know the true mysteries and understand the cardinal points will see a very close association to this. But as it was explained to me in the dream, this is our physical form, this is our emotional form, this is our spiritual form, and this is our soul form. This is not to confuse the mental form. This is a different thing, and I will touch on to that later. The reason why Vav was in the middle is because we bind from our physical forms, from our emotional forms, from our spiritual forms, and from our soul forms, which could be also classified as the mental form or is associated with it, to somebody else's physical form, emotional form, spiritual form, and soul form. So, the spirit then weighed is then measured by the cherubim who carry the spirit. When one rises, all rise. When one moves, all move. One dwells in the body, in the soul, and the spirit and emotion forms. One's actions bind the body, the soul, the spirit, and the heart. So, to simplify what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these forms, if a person just listens as if they're just in their physical form, But if a person then further goes on to not just hear, but to pay attention, they'll be uniting, right, the sustenance of their mental form with their physical form. But if they go further on to apply the fire of the will, then what will end up happening is they'll absolve understanding. And then this will unify the spirit to the soul via the mental to the body. And this in turn will elevate the emotions. The truth of this is that you have a body, you have an emotion form, you have a spiritual form, you have a soul form. The real truth is that you're none of these forms. The honest reality is that you're the infinite expression in the midst of these forms. And you're expressing yourself out into your physical form, you're expressing yourself into your emotional form, you're expressing yourself in your spiritual form, you're expressing yourself into your mental and your soul form. As explained before, this is the difference between a person who hears and a person who listens. A person who listens and a person who pays attention. A person who pays attention, a person who understands. A person who understands and a person who utilizes. Now, why does it say when one rises, they all rise, when one lowers, they all lower? Because this infinite form is the highest expression. Now, if your infinite form has to put itself into any of these lower forms, what ends up happening is it becomes lowered. This is like when a person is stretched out at work and then they're also dealing with emotional problems and then they're thinking too much. This is what it is meant when it is written, "The Lord has gone before me and scattered mine enemies." This is also what it is meant when it is written, "And like sheep, they have all gone astray." When it is written here that when one rise, they all rise, because this infinite expression has to lower itself to go into any of these lower forms. However, all of these forms are unified and rectified when brought into this infinite form, which is the true expression of all of those other forms. And this is what it is written when it is stated, "To be still and know that I am the Lord, and gather ye yourself, O Israel."
Amen, Yira. What Yira has explained here is practically one of the most esoteric levels to the Merkaba, to the divine Merkaba. We have this allegory come in many forms. The rider upon a horse, or the Merkaba, Adam upon this chariot. So he's revealing one of the most esoteric levels to the Merkaba, that Adam, we have to understand we have 5 aspects here. We have 5 attributes. And this is linked to the 5 Partsufim. So Adam represents the highest Partsuf here. And then these 4 cardinal points of the Merkaba represent the 4 lower Partsufim. And so what's being revealed here that Yira is getting at is a very esoteric understanding and explanation of this very esoteric level of understanding of the Merkaba. So this 5th Partsuf is sometimes also termed the Yechidah in Hebrew, and it's actually pointing to our archetypal divine seal, of which I have spoken of in other videos. This Adam that sits upon the Merkaba is the archetypal divine seal. Here in our present day existence, we are not aware of our higher self. This is what is commonly termed by many of the other, we would call impure goyim, as the higher self. This is correct. You can call it your higher self. You can call it Yechidah, the highest 5th Partsuf, or you can call it, as Yira says, your higher, infinite self. They're all just synonyms for describing this very high, sublime, exalted attribute. And what Yira is describing here is these interactions and levels that are taking place in our everyday existence between our archetypal divine self, or our higher self, and these lower forms, or Partsufim. And very interestingly, one proof of this in the Hebrew is that if you multiply the word Elohim times 5, 86 times 5 is equal to the Hebrew word Nefesh, indicating mystically the 5 Partsufim of our existence.
That was wonderfully put.
Thank you, Yira.
When one rises, all rise, and when one moves, all move. To be lifted, when all rise, the spirit is lifted. When all descend, the spirit is lowered. In a flurry of hail and a sea of fire, the Ishim lower and lift the spirit. And what is this like? In our interview, I had described these angels in between these two positions here. And I had described them as a flurry of hail and a flurry of fire. I further went on to say this is like a spirit that is on high or a spirit that is low. Now I'll go on to the characteristics of what involves this specific angel and its relation to these cherubim. This may simplify their understanding. So assuming that these are the four forms, the Ishim are more like this. And they have to deal with that infinite form in the midst of that, whether it becomes lowered or risen, and a flurry of hail or a sea of fire. So what is this like? Well, lowering our spirit in sin or lifting our spirit in virtue. As we know, there are 7 deadly sins as attributed into the New Testament and universally accepted throughout Catholicism. I'm going to give a much deeper mystery behind these 7 deadly sins, and in relation as they were dispensated, because they were in this dream as well, but they were explained in a very unique context. There are 3 internal, 3 external, and there is one governing over or presiding over these things. What is this like? Envy and greed have the letter E in them, and out of the 7 deadly sins, the only other sin to have the letter E in it is the word pride. And the letter E comes from ayin and he, and both of these things denote sight. And this gives away their attribution, for greed and envy are the 2 eyes. Sloth is the chest, gluttony is the stomach, lust is the genitals, wrath is the hands, and pride is the state of consciousness, which is a reflection of that infinite form I was describing earlier. However, there's also the opposite of these things. Instead of pride, we have humility. Instead of envy, we have empathy. Instead of greed, we have charity. Instead of gluttony, we have temperance. Instead of slothfulness, we have fruitfulness. Instead of wrathfulness, we have creation. And instead of lust, we have love. To be lifted, one must be lowered. To be lowered, one must be lifted. One who dies is born in the spirit. Such is the nature of suffering. Explaining what this is, our sin causes suffering. Our sin causes suffering. This word here leaves another. Pride leaves another low. Envy leaves another judged. Greed leaves another used. Sloth leaves another burdened. Gluttony leaves another wanting. Lust leaves another exploited. Wrath leaves another pain. Our body, which is the temple, our spirit, from which is its altar, we bind from those forms to those forms. And so when we exert ourselves in this likeness, we cause suffering not only to ourselves, but to everyone and everything around us.
Now, for those of you who are listening and are ignorant, you may be asking, why is Yira saying this? Why is he talking about this? Hopefully you're not ignorant and you're not thinking this. We are now getting at, what we are getting at is stage 2, level 2 in the process of holy initiation, which is the tikkun of ourself, the rectification of our spiritual existence through the rectification of these attributes. So now the second stage and second level is learning the Holy Torah, learning the royal divine law, keeping the mitzvot, and rectifying yourself in purity and holiness, and subduing the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. This is what we are now getting at. This is this is probably one of the most momentous and critical stages of holy initiation, and it is one of the most difficult. It's literally the most difficult. It is mission impossible because we all have sins that easily beset us. We all have weaknesses, and we have to transcend these weaknesses. We have to overcome and subdue these evil inclinations within ourselves. Everyone is different. Some people have trouble with certain sins, others with other sins, and this is one of the most difficult stages of holy initiation. And it can take many years to get to a point of holiness that then allows you to ascend ascend those higher levels and access those higher gates. You can add that to that, Ida, if I'm explaining myself correctly.
No, absolutely. You touched on all of this perfectly well. And as I was just stating, we have 7 sins, but there are also 7 virtues. And so what is the rectification of these things? Instead of pride, which leaves another low, humility. And humility leaves another accepted. And humility's root word is humiliation. And this implies being humiliated. There have been many, many times where I have felt humiliated in the circumstances that I'm in. But this is what subjects humility, because this is the exact opposite of pride. When you feel humiliated, your initial reaction is pride, and this is truly the determination of these things. Instead of envy, which leaves another judged, empathy. Empathy leaves another understood. Instead of greed, which leaves another used, charity, which leaves another hope. And hope does not come from man. Hope comes from God when man chooses to do the will of God. Instead of slothfulness, fruitfulness. Fruitfulness leaves another inspired. What person cannot look at the works of the great masters and not feel inspired, or walk into the Sistine Chapel, look up to the works of Michelangelo and not feel inspired? Instead of gluttony, which leaves another wanting, temperance, which leaves another strengthened. And this strength does not appeal to the consciousness. It appeals to the true self, which is deep within. The tempered spirit strengthens those around it without it needing to be spoken or communicated to the carnal mind. Creation leaves another beauty. So instead of wrath, which leaves another pain, creation, which takes time. I could spend 10,000 hours developing a beautiful masterpiece and in seconds destroy it. Creation takes time. And creation leaves another beauty, which is the attribution of God. And instead of lust, which leaves another exploited, love, which leaves another loved. And of course, we're going to fluctuate back and forth. The entire world fluctuates back and forth between these things. Not everyone is just core here, though there are some people. And not everyone is core here, though there are some people. We fluctuate back and forth between these things. However, this is another key to gather yourself, O Israel. And this is also a key to be still and know that I'm the Lord. That is rooted in the humility. What does it mean to be still and know that I'm the Lord? At this point, by which you are no longer moved by scorn or praise, when all things before you are still. At that point, can you obtain this 8th point called wisdom.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Yuda.
This isn't to say that wisdom is the opposite of pride, because there's a fool's wisdom and there's true wisdom.
And I wanted to add some very momentous points to this, which is a couple of really important points. One is that this goes back to one of my most favorite words, which is the word equanimity. There are stories of Jews, attempting holy initiation in the face of powerful holy grandmasters and holy magicians. And there's a very famous story, and I think it's from the Baal Shem Tov, but I'm not sure, I can't remember, where there was a young Jew who wanted to become a powerful grandmaster holy magician, knew a grandmaster, went to him and sought holy initiation. And he was tested on the spot by the grandmaster, and the grandmaster asked him and said, and I'm loosely paraphrasing here, but he said something to the effect of, how do you feel when somebody gives you high praise? And the young Jew said, well, I feel very good. I feel very good and high when somebody gives me high praise. And he asked him, how do you feel when somebody scorns you and humiliates you and insults you? And he said, obviously, I'm going to be very angry. I'm going to be very, very upset. And he told a young, immature Jew, he told them, come back to me when neither of these affect you. When you can be in a true state of equanimity, irregardless of your circumstances and your externalities. So what Yida is touching upon here is a very, very momentous, powerful key. Because most people can never attain this state of equanimity. They're easily swayed and easily moved by anything, by any circumstance, by any suffering, by any affliction, by any humiliation, by any insult. They can't turn the other cheek, like Yeshua said. It's too difficult for them. They have too much pride, too much ego. And I also want to mention another point to this, which is the difficulty when we're talking about holy initiation. I have all these stupid, retarded, impure goyim. They all want to run to occult bookstores. They all want to start doing magic. They want to start invoking angels and all this, stupid stuff. And black magic is very easy. I mastered all of black magic in a few days, like in 3 days, being a reincarnation of King Shalom. Like this black magic, I could have been the greatest black magician that ever walked the earth. It's so easy. It's ridiculously easy. There's nothing to black magic. But holy magic is a whole different story. It's a whole different domain. It can take people half a lifetime just to get to this second stage, to reach a state of equanimity, to be still, as Yida is talking about, to be able to subdue the evil inclination, to such great exceeding levels. The ancient Chazal, they state, who is a warrior? They asked all of Yisrael, who among Yisrael is a warrior? Tell me, who is a true warrior? Define what a true warrior is. The answer, simple, he who subdues the evil inclination completely. We don't define might and power by human strength, but by spiritual strength.
That was very, very, very wisely put.
Thank you, Yida.
And of course, to reiterate here, to be lifted, one must be lowered. To be lifted in humility, you must lower your pride. To be lowered, one must be lifted. To be lowered in humility, you must lift another. One who dies is born in the spirit. One whose ego dies is born in the spirit. Such is the nature of suffering.
Well, I must add one very wise thing to what you said, Yida. You'll have to excuse me for what I'm about to say. So, one of my teachers, who is of the line of Hamishak Yaakov Frank, and I'm just gonna, for those of you who are acquainted with this grandmaster who recently passed away, he would teach and say, you know what? You cannot destroy, you cannot kill the ego. I got many jackasses that come to me on this channel and they think that I'm egotistical. They tell me, oh, you're so egotistical, the way you talk, the way you teach. They've bought into the illusion. They've been sucked into my illusion, into my facade. I'll be the first to tell you, absolutely, I'm egotistical. Do you even know the etymology of the word ego? It comes from the Greek word which means I am. What did Hashem say in the Torah? He said, Ayah, Asher Ayah. In the ancient Greek, it's ego is ego. He is the ego. And I am part of that ego. We subdue the ego and transcend the ego through ego. Now, I know that may be a mouthful for many of you listening, but those who are wise and illuminated will more than know and understand. But you may continue, Yira.
Yes. In this he gave me his breath, and I inflamed in the word. Many great wonders did I behold as I ascended into a place without boundaries. These engraved into my spirit, and I was born anew. And I'd like to point out what was happening here. As pointed out in my last videos, I explained some of these things. But for example, the letter Aleph showed before my eyes, and I would see the word air, and I immediately knew Aleph's association was with air. Or I would see the word leaf, I knew Lamed meant a staff. I knew Ayin was external, Aleph was air, and Fe was a mouth or throat, and so I knew that the leaf converted atmospheric substance. I heard the word dog, I heard the word Dalet. I knew it was a path without walls. O is to be observed and bound, and Gimel was its progression, so I knew the dog was not supposed to be inside of the house. I heard the word senses. I knew that the letter E's association was with He and Ayin, and I knew that we had 5 senses for this reason, because He was the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Furthermore, this was confirmed by the 5 senses: to see, taste, hear, feel, and smell. Presumably you would feel with your 2 eyes, which is why the word eye has 2 E's in there to denote the 2 eyes, why you see with 2 E's to denote that type of sight. But moreover, you feel for what you see, but with E's attribution being to 5, you feel with 2 sets of 5. And this is also called hands, which begin with the letter H, because He's attribution is 5. And for this reason, it is also called feet, because it is upon 2 sets of 5 that we walk upon. As I touched upon in the video, I heard the word triangle. I knew the letter T was Sadi. I knew it was a pillar. Resh value is 200. I's value is 10. 2 plus 1 is 3. So I knew the triangle was supported by 3 pillars, by 3 sides. And many other great mysteries did I behold in this great realm. And all of the letters were dispensated from A to Z.
So this is really important, because we are now delineated and enumerating stage 3 and level 3 of holy initiation, which is coming to the understanding of the holy mysteries behind the letters, all of the holy mysteries behind the letters, right? In part 1, I elucidated and illuminated the foundation to the holy mysteries behind the letters. And by understanding the meanings of the letters, understanding the meaning of words which are comprised of these letters, understanding the gematria of these letters, understanding every single aspect of every single letter, which is essentially a divine seal. We know divine seals are the keys to holy magic. This then is the gateway to spiritual ascension. And it is when Yira entered this gateway that he then saw even higher mysteries of the letters, because understanding the holy mysteries of the letters is a progression, and you have to start somewhere. So notice what Yira did here. He has made all of these beautiful artworks with, writing all of these letters and permuting these letters, right? This is what Abraham Abulafia talks about in his magical treatises. He says the first steps of initiation is to, you have to obviously learn the gematria. You have to understand the basic meanings of each of the letters, which, by the way, are polysemous in nature, and and then start writing them down. He says, then get a piece of paper and a pen, and actually start writing down the letters. Then start permuting the letters. Start visualizing the letters. It's all a buildup. It's all a progression. What Yira's describing here is he's describing already very supernal stages in the progression, where he's already ascending into higher universes, where he is gaining access to even higher, more esoteric holy mysteries of the universe on the letters, because the letters are the foundation of everything. But perhaps you can speak a little bit more about the initial stages of initiation, which is understanding the letters, permuting the letters, visualizing the letters. So if you could expound upon that, because this goes back to Abraham Abulafia. This really goes back to Sefer Yetzirah, right? In one of my videos, I said that Abraham, our great patriarch, was one of the most powerful magicians that has ever walked the earth, bar none. And I told you that some of the most powerful books on black magic were written by him. But there's a flip side to that coin, because he also wrote some of the most powerful books on holy magic. And what was written in some of these books are the things that Abraham Abulafia reveals in his holy treatises. And Sefer Yetzirah is one of those books. Very few people understand this, that Sefer Yetzirah is one of those books. When we say that Sefer Yetzirah is a Kabbalistic book, it's really a manual. Every Mekabel knows that Sefer Yetzirah is an esoteric manual that outlines and summarizes the system of holy magic, which the Essenes were grandmasters of, by the way. So, yeah, if you could briefly touch upon these initial stages of holy initiation, of writing down the letters, permuting them, visualizing them, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. So, what had happened here during the stage to help envision what it means to have been inflamed in the word, and these things have been engraved in my spirit. For example, things like the Lord God Almighty created man from the dust of the ground, letter M, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, letter A, and man became a living soul. So I knew that A's association was with air, aeroplane, aero, aerodynamic. I knew that the letter B's association was with house. For example, the word body. Know you not your body is the temple, and the Spirit of God dwells inside you. I knew that the letter C meant to carry, and even in most basic of words like the cross, which too had to be carried. I knew the letter D was a path without walls. It was so infinitely expansive. In Hebrew, it's called dalet. They called God Deus. It is the root word for the word day. It is so infinitely expansive with no walls. It is all-encompassing. And so they thought this one letter was God. And it is the deity in the word deity and the word deus and many other words like that. I knew that the word G here, which means to progress, like the word God, right? G means to progress. And Dalet is the path without walls, or the all-encompassing. So I knew God was the progressor of the all-encompassing. I knew the letter He meant to behold, it was referring to an internal sight. So when I heard, behold, the heavens are inside you, I completely understood. I knew that the letter F, it meant a throat. I knew that we took food in by means of the throat. I knew that fruit was in reference to the throat. This also had its connotation within. I knew that fear was from within. I knew that from was from within in reference to another, and many other mysteries. What is fun to one another is internal, and what is fear in one another is also internal. I knew that the letter E has association with eyes, as I had shown it being used in the word I and the word see, but even in the scriptures, the eyes of the Lord are upon the evil. I knew that the letter I had its association with J, I, and Y, and I saw it in a many number of instances, all the way from the names of God, which were written in Hebrew, and then I saw it expanded off even into English. For example, the letter J is an expression of the Spirit. You see it in the word joking and the word judge and justice. These are all expressions of the Spirit. I was the individual spirit. Y was another spirit or God. I heard anything with the letter K, and I knew that its reference was with the head, the skull, and it was attribution was also with bones. We see it in the word skeleton or kneecap, which is the head, but it's also bone. The skull is also the head, it's also bone. A knuckle is also a head, it's also bone. The letter L, it means a staff. I knew the lamb was the good shepherd. I knew that the Lord was called the good shepherd. The letter P meant mouth, as I explained with cup. He said lukewarm will be spewed from the mouth. As I pointed out, the letter F means throat. As it is written, there's no faithfulness in their mouth. Their throats are an open sepulcher. And letter O meant a single open eye. As pointed out, the god Horus had one eye, Osiris, one eye, Odin, one eye, Thor, one eye, God, represented by the eye of providence. Therefore, the Lord gave this parable: if the eyes are the light of the body, if thine eye be single, thy whole body will be filled with light. And the letter Nun, it meant soul and fish. I saw it in the word soul. As pointed out, man was made from the dust of the ground. And Lord God breathed air into his nostrils, and man became a living soul. Now, if I take N to mean fish, you understand I'll make you fishers of men. For this reason, he was called a Nazarene. This is why in Japanese, the word mermaid, ningyo, in English, navy. And soul, this is why you say yes in English, which I denoted meant spirit, or no, as your soul is not agreeing with that. This is why you have the word nafesh, or niño in Spanish, soul of my soul. Mem means earth and water, as denoted the word mountain, which means earth, or marina, like a body of water. I named you Moshe, I found you in the water. I'll make you fishers of men. The city of Moroni was caused to go under the sea. The city of Moroni was caused to go under the earth. The letter T here represented serpent, and this is why Shaitan is described as a serpent. And moreover, you see it in a couple of interesting uses, including in the word serpent at the very end of it. But it's mainly associated with its attributions towards wisdom, and it can have its connotations with technology, although these things are interchangeable. The letter S, I knew S was fire. I knew the sword begins with the letter S because it was forged in the fire. Sun, fire. Stars, fire. Spirit, fire. Soul, fire. It also has attributions with Samek, which was cycles. So I knew that the sun cycled, the sword had to be cycled in fire, and the sun was a cycle of fire. And many other, I knew the seasons were converted by heat.
Resh, the form, like the word car, carry a form. Q was an expression of the head. I knew the queen expressed that. Or when you quit something, it's because you're absolutely dead set from the head. U, as is pointed out, was to unite. V was the tip of the nail, like love, vengeance, violence. W were many bindings, like world, well, who, what, when, where, to connect things. X was an absolute variable. TH was the hand of God. This is why at birth, B, you were brought in the house. I, your spirit. R, your form. TH, by the hand of God, and he gave you the breath. B, to the house. R, your form. E was externalized. A, the air. TH, by the hand of God, and you can see. He is the originator of our thoughts. TH, from God's hand. T, to your hand. It is a double letter. And so too will he receive us at death. Dalet, from the path without walls. TH, into God's hand. Z, it was a pillar. How do I know this? The word zebra. Z means a pillar. E is to see it. B is on the house. R is the form. A is the variable fulfilled by the letter Z. This is why a zebra's stripe means to see many pillars in the house of the form. For this reason, you might as well call Zoo jail. It also has its association with Zane, the dagger. You see it in the word kamikaze. It's in the word berserker, and many other instances. Like zombie, or Zyklon B. And of course, I've explained letter Y in its enunciation with God and another spirit.
Thank you for sharing that, Yira. So, a parable for the wise. I am a programmer / architect in the secular world, I guess similar to Yeshua being an architect. And as I stated in part 1, we're dealing with the building blocks of the divine code that runs and operates our construct, right? We read in Sefer Yetzirah that we have 3 mothers, 7 doubles, 12 elementals. I want to focus on the word elementals. We can think of these divine seals as elementals. When we think of a programming language, we have constructs. I like to call them mini constructs. In a programming language, we have the if-else construct, we have the looping construct, right? All of these words in a programming language, we can think of them as elementals, as building blocks, as mini constructs that make up the entire source code of the programming language or of the application itself. And so understanding the nature and quintessence of these divine seals then allows us to begin programming, which is holy magic. When you understand, the first step when you're learning to program is you need to learn the essence of the mini constructs, whether it's the if-else blocks, the looping blocks, etc. Once you learn that, then you can start writing code, right? So the first step is you need to learn the essence of all of these divine seals. Then you can start combining them and permuting them to build the divine code, to build, to start manipulating and, the construct, transcending the construct, right? So this is a parable for the wise. Now, in Sefer Yetzirah, one of the most powerful lines in the entire book, when speaking on these holy divine seals, it states, weigh them, carve them, engrave them. Yira, what does this mean to you? And how do you apply this? Can you hear me, Yira?
Shalom.
Shalom. Did you hear what I said, Yira?
Yes.
Okay. I know you're showing us. You're answering the question with this display, but could you elaborate in words what we're seeing, what this means to you to carve, engrave, and permute the letters?
Of course. So this means taking the letters forwards, taking the letters backwards, peeking into their inner mysteries. As an example of this, I had explained a few instances of this word type of permutation that you're describing here.
Indeed, very beautiful. This, fellow listeners, is the work of a true Grandmaster Holy Magician. Beautifully well done by a Grandmaster Holy Magician. This is what Grandmaster Holy Magicians do. This is how they operate. Go read Abraham Abulafia. You will see this. You will see similar diagrams and charts in his books. No different. He fully understood the totality of the holy principle and mystery at hand. So this is what it means. Now, can you, Ira, when we get to the level of visualization, can you outline some key principles and explanations of how you visualize the letters? What are some keys that you can give our listeners and principles that they can apply when they are visualizing the letters?
Yes. So, as an example, I'll give you a slight demonstration. So, assuming that all the listeners here have the prerequisite understandings as everything that we have just covered over, we've defined letters. I've defined gather yourself, O Israel. I've defined what it means to be scattered. I've defined what it means to be still. At the point by which the letters had engraved, black upon white, unified. What does this mean? As stated, if you just hear what I'm saying, then you're in your physical. But if you listen, you're unifying your mental to your physical. If you further go on to apply the spirit of your will and contemplate these things to absolve an understanding, then you elevate your spirit. So this understanding is important. Assuming that you have the understanding of the letters, taking any one of these letters, seeing it with your physical eyes, calming your thoughts, gathering yourself. Then while physically applying your sight, in your mind's eye, envision that exact same letter, blazing white. Apply its understanding, apply its meaning, apply its gematriot. Apply these things until the letter is as if it were dancing. Then apply another letter, like this aleph. Then apply the meanings of the aleph, separate them. See yods, see vavs, see yod he vav he. Permute these things, return it to the aleph, combine it with the shin, permute these things forwards and backwards. Apply another letter and retain in this state of concentration until permuting has been done many, many times.
Yira, genius, absolutely brilliant and genius. My spirit was jumping up and down in joy because you so clearly explained the holy principle at hand. I mean, it's just brilliant and genius, literally spoken like a true Grandmaster Holy Magician. For those of you who are acquainted with the system of Abraham Abulafia, you know we are speaking one and the same thing here. The system we've outlined here is the same exact system in Abraham Abulafia. What Yira just said, I wouldn't be surprised if it's verbatim found in the text of Abraham Abulafia. In fact, Abraham Abulafia writes pretty much the same exact thing what Yira just said, almost verbatim. I mean, we're giving you the keys, we're giving you the principles here. Baruch Hashem, I hope you're all very grateful, in what we're doing here. This is Yira's mission. Yira's mission, at the directive of Yod He Vav He, is to reveal these keys and principles of Holy Majid that have been hidden and concealed for thousands of years, that no one has really ever understood, that less than a handful of people have ever fully mastered, So thank you so much, Yira, for explaining that and sharing that. I mean, it's just absolutely powerful. So now that, let's say we just delineated stage 3 and level 3. Okay, let's say that you've done this. You're spending many hours in meditation, doing these holy rituals, applying these principles. Explain to us, Yira, reveal to us what happens next.
Yes. In this he gave to me his breath, and I inflamed in the word. Many great wonders did I behold as I ascended into a place without boundaries. These engraved into my spirit, and I was born new. So before we get into this section here, there's 3 things that I'd like to touch on. One is there's a private section
regarding this that is fully expanded upon. Regarding this cross. And that's what's talked about here. So, the spirit inflamed is then elevated by the Ophanim who revealed the secrets of the universe. I'm going to give a very special key here. What I was shown, as I just shown a brief image in that text, was a cross. And as we are here, again, with that very same cross. This was the blazing cross the Ophanim had shown to me. And as we know, there are 3 mother letters. Aleph, Mem, Shin. We know there's a 4th mother letter, which denotes earth. And as again,
would you say that 4th Mem is Mem Sophith, right? The final form of Mem?
Yes. Yes. And as this blazing cross was blazing before me, these Ophanim began to give instructions. Now I'd like to point something out. This entire sphere has all of these inside of it. And this sphere is mirrored here and it's mirrored here. And this is why these are black. These are black to simplify that. I have many volumes of writings talking specifically just about this cross and these principles. So what does this mean? Well, we already know that Aleph separates Mem from Shin. Anyone who's watched any of our interviews will be familiar with this very familiar concept. But there were 7 double letters. They first gathered into Tav, which is the infinite expanse of infinality and God's hand, as I explained with Theos, theology, the, that, this, there, those, birth, death, and thought. Resh was form, and it is black because it denoted the attributes of all things in all of these forms. As I explained, Aleph separates from is every insect, every fish, every plant, every alien, every god, every demon, every angel, every planet, every dimension. And Dalet is the path without walls and is referring to the infinite expanse of finality. So in terms of the 7 double letters, we have 4 here, and we've already delineated 3 here. The letter B is here, Aleph blended with Mem to create Beit, but here on this blazing cross, we're going to go straight into the principle, assuming that everyone here is associated with letter Beit, meaning house. The air houses the water, and the water houses the air. This, in fact, is scientific fact. The air houses the water and the clouds and the rain, and the water houses the air and the H2O. Shin and Aleph are met here in Gimel, which is the letter G. What does this mean scientifically? This means that the air progresses the fire, but it also means that the fire is progressed by the air. But we see this in certain words, like the word grow. If I'm growing something, I can assume that I'm going to need atmospheric substance and that I'm going to need light. If I have gasoline, I'm going to assume that in order for me to progress my vehicle with gasoline, I'm going to need to apply fire and convert that into an atmospheric substance. The letter Kof is between Shin and Mem. The letter Kof means to carry, and it denotes a covering. I asked the angel, I said, so why is Shin on top? He said, because it was given for a covering for the light. He said, this is why it's called shirts, covering for the light, shoes, covering for the light, shorts, covering for the light, shadow, covering for the light, shade, covering for the light. He said, a sheath is a covering for the light, which was formed, which is a covering for a sword, which begins with letter S because the sword was forged in the fire. So thus it is a covering for the light. Letter C has this exact same connotation we see in the word clothing. Clothing is a covering for light upon solids. If I want to cook something, I'm going to apply fire upon solids. Moreover, the word color is a blanket of light upon solids. The letter F here is letter Fe. It means a mouth and a throat. And with its association here between Mem and Mem, this denotes that all things that have a mouth are taking in liquids and solidic substance. Now, of course, in the intermingling of these things, everything is mixing into everything else. And so all of these letters have all of the other attributes of all of these other letters. They're all blended in primordial chaos. But in the middle of this, when the order was constructed, certain letters had more closer associations with other letters. And these in themselves had forged certain principles. I can assume that everything in existence that has a mouth is taking in liquids, solids, and air. I can assume that everywhere in existence, air houses water, water houses air. I can assume everywhere in existence, the air progresses the fire, and the fire is progressed by the air. I can assume everywhere in existence that anything that's color is going to be a blanket of light. I can assume if I'm going to cook, I'm going to have to apply fire to solids. I'm going to assume if I have clothing, it's going to be a covering of light upon something. So, of course, as not delineated inside of the video, we have the 12 simple letters. And the 12 simple letters are 3 given to each one of the 4. And so, for example, we'll get into some of the interesting aspects of this. Over here with Shin, we have Yod, Lamed, and Ayin. Over here in Aleph, we have He, Samek, and Chet. And so we'll get into some of the interesting attributions of how this operates. Assuming a Lamed is here, we know that this means staff, and it also means vibration. We know Samek means to support and cycle. With this attribution here, this means that the air progresses the fire is progressed by the air, right? What is this like? This is like seasons. I know that seasons, because letter S in its support with cycles, has these attributions. So I can know that seasons are cycles of heat, which it indeed is because of these associations. Moreover, Lamed, which is association with vibration, like in the word light. I can assume that the air that progresses the fire will affect its vibration, whether its vibration is great or whether its vibration is diminished. Based on this Lamed meaning vibration, I can also safely assume that the different types of atmospheric sustenance and the different types of solidic sustenance that are placed in the fire could also change the color of the fire, which I also know is true. The letter Ayin's association is close here with Mem and Kof. As denoted, Kof is like a color, which is a covering of light upon solids. And indeed, that is what we perceive, Ayin, in externality. Yod is coming off of Shin, and it's denoting the spirit that's absolved within that fire. When am I talking about fire? I'm talking about primordial light. Why are these white spheres here clear? Well, they're clear because they actually have the essence of all lights inside of them. But they're emanating, they have the essence of the light inside of them. They themselves are not that light. And as noted with Aleph separates Mem from Shin, even in the 7 colors, you'll find that yellow blends twice. Yellow blends with blue to create green, and yellow blends with red to create orange. And this, in fact, is the case. Yellow blends with blue to create green, and yellow blends with red to create orange.
So, Ira, I want to mention a really important point you highlighted a little bit earlier, where you said that every letter contains all the letters. And what that comes to show is that, as we find throughout the Kabbalah, that these upper constructs and structures are quintessentially divine holograms, because what we are finding here is holographic properties to these constructs and structures. It's very, very interesting. But now, I want to ask, I guess you could call them stupid questions. You know, I don't know. I'm being very humble here. I'm going to be humble, and also for the sake of some good-hearted listeners who may find this a bit advanced and complex. I want to ask 2 questions, which is, one, you can see that the constructs that Grandmaster Holy Magicians use and draw, it's very similar to what you see in the Impure and Holy Occult, where they draw geometric figures, divine seals. This is one common thread that we find in Magique that we see here. So my first question is, you know, and I'm saying this in great humility, I was not given the gift and talent of artistry, of being a good drawer. I really suck at drawing. My writing is like chicken scratch. If that's the case, Yida, you know, is that going to affect, you know, harmfully in any way me doing, you know, some of this work in drawing these seals and letters and things like that? Is that going to hurt the power of my work if I suck at drawing and my drawings and works are not as beautiful as yours?
No, of course not, my brother. So keep in mind, when I saw the blazing cross, I saw it in this dream, in this vision, and I've recorded it here. So I saw it before that. So there was nothing to do with artistry or anything that prerequisited that information. The only prerequisite that was to that information was the understanding of the letters before.
Sure. And I understand, Yida. Not that I needed to know that. I was mostly asking for other listeners, because we have to understand, Hashem's love. So, Hashem is all about, looking at the heart of a person and honoring that, right? When you do impure, unholy magic, the circle has to be an exact circle. The geometric figure has to be perfect. You have to do this, you have to do that. You have to be very methodical in your ritual. And in the holy domain, that's not how things operate. Because Hashem is looking at the heart. And it's a total different spirit at hand when you're doing holy magic, in contradistinction to the spirit that is behind impure, unholy magic. The next question I have is, what advice would you give, Yira? Because, and I'm speaking again from my own humility. When I've read the works of Abraham Bolafia, this guy was such a powerful Grandmaster Holy Magician who traversed so many holy universes, met so many powerful divine entities, that some of the knowledge and wisdom that he writes in his books is so sublime, so lofty, that I'll tell you right now in honesty that some of the stuff I have trouble understanding. There's things that I didn't even fully understand myself, because it represents such ancient primordial systems of knowledge and wisdom that I have no context and foundation for in this last generation. And sometimes these things and these principles, they can seem very lofty, very advanced. What advice would you give, Yida, to the person who's listening right now and is feeling a bit overwhelmed and like, oh my God, this seems so advanced, so difficult. Like, what advice would you give, in all humility?
In all humility, of course, understanding a construct like this would have many prior prerequisites to that. You would have to have an exceptional understanding of the letters and being able to gather yourself and definitely have a level of abstract thinking. But for any person who feels discouraged by these things, understand that this is a very high level that we're talking about here. In fact, I wouldn't even encourage anybody to even attempt jumping steps and trying to work with the things that we're discussing here until those prior things have first been alleviated. And the reason why is because, as you had stated earlier regarding the ego, what will end up happening is information will be extracted from this, and then it will be applied only to one's own understanding, and then that will become discolored. And instead of having a synopsis of its entirety, it'll be delineated into a broken mesh of what it originally looked like, and it'll become perverted. Even as it is written, when a person wishes to tell a lie, he must first begin with a truth.
Very, very wisely, brilliantly stated, Hida. I want to add another point, which is that we also need to understand that when you start working these very advanced, sublime levels of magic, and you're trying to access very powerful, holy, divine entities, you have to understand they are holy. And this is what impure, retarded, stupid goyim don't understand. This is what they don't understand. This is, if you watched my series, at the beginning of this series, I said the prerequisites are to watch my series on magic, my introductory series on magic. We're dealing with holy beings here, okay? This is what the impure, retarded, stupid goyim don't understand. I got these stupid goyim that tell me I invoked the archangel Michael. I mean, how stupid and retarded do you think I am that I'm going to believe that you impure, unholy, profane goy, that you invoke such a powerful holy entity? You must be really stupid and retarded and gullible if you truly believe that, okay? It is as it is written in the Torah, be ye holy as I am holy, by Yod He Vav He. These divine beings do not approach impure, profane goyim and individuals. They just don't. Yira, you gave me a warning. What's the warning that you give when you want to perform these systems, and what's the warning you give regarding these divine entities that they don't approach impure, profane people?
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I'm getting ready to touch on that. To summarize the level of the Ophanim, to understand this level, the Ophanim revealed the secrets of the universe. I'll give you one last aspect of relational understanding here. This letter Sadi's here is pillars, which is quite fitting for its association. You see the letter here, Zizayin, which is a weapon. We see its association between Shin and Mem, and I can apply that when fire is applied to the earth, it indeed is forged, amongst many other things. What happened here with the level of the Ophanim were principles of creation were extracted out. And I was instructed in sublime mysteries. As I had explained, the air houses the water and the water houses the air. Well, the angel further went on to say that Dam was the blood, and that when the air was mixed with the blood, it was the first man named Adam. As pointed out by the cross, Aleph blended with Mem to create the letter Bet, which is the house. Therefore, if the air houses the water and the water houses the air, then the air mixes with the blood, where? In the heart, which is represented in Hebrew by the letters Lamed and Bet. And this is to demonstrate that connection. So I can say, if I were to breathe, because of its association with letter B, I can assume that my breath is going to go to the heart. My blood, which begins with letter B, I can assume that that too goes to the heart. And in the heart, the air does in fact mix with the blood. In Hebrew, the gematria value is 32. This is 22 and 10. Now, getting into the mysteries, we know that this is called the holy place. So when dealing with the Ophanim, as these secrets were being instructed, this was in a very, 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 very sublime state of understanding. And this is after these letters had been engraved. These letters had been engraved before any of this had been shown or any of this had been demonstrated. And I guess it suffices itself that it would be in that order, for which reason I more than likely would not have had an understanding of it.
But why don't you tell them what you told me, that these divine entities, they don't approach impure, profane individuals?
No, absolutely not. They're actually pushed away by it. So our sins in those lower forms, your pride and your lust and your gluttony and your slothfulness, which is an emanation of pride, and your greed and all of these other things, and your wrath and all of these other things, push these sublime mysteries and these higher realms away from you. And why is this? So going back to those four forms, associating that to the tree of life, we're going to associate this as the desire body, this is the emotion body, this is the spiritual body, and this is the soul body. This is the infinite high form that I was talking about in the middle is cherubim, and this therefore would be the mental cloud of darkness. These have to be gathered. This is what it means to gather yourself, O Israel, right? This is what it means to be gathered, your desire body, your emotion body, your spirit body, your soul body, your physical body, your mental body, all these things together into one. The only way to absolve this is through Binah, which is understanding, and it is the 22 Hebrew letters. There is no other way. This is very cut and dry. This is very black and white. There is no other way to hold these forms together. In alchemy, I believe it would have been called the adhesive of the white gluten, or the gluten of the white eagle. But what this is the word which holds these together. It's what binds the forms together via understanding. And as pointed out, this is the difference between a person who hears, a person who listens, a person who applies his will to pay attention and then to understand, and further then to apply themselves. As it is written, the Lord has gone before me and scattered mine enemies. People are fluctuating between their desires, their emotions, their spiritual form, and their soul form. And as they're experiencing reality here, then they're blackening their mental form. They're experiencing reality in their emotions, they're blackening it. They're experiencing over here, then they're blackening it. They're experiencing over here, and they're blackening it. And they keep polluting this cloud of darkness with these different expressions of their infinite experience. The only way to dilute this is to bring down Binah. As it is written, man is not to rely on his own understanding, but to rely on the word of God. And what is this really? So if a person absolves themselves in any of these lower forms, like I was talking about, this infinite form has to lower itself to go in any of these forms. If you partake in any of that, you're scattering yourself. And that scattering draws you far away from him. Gathering yourself draws you near to him. There's only one way to gather near him, as it is written, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind. And I just demonstrated heart is 32, 22, and 10. This in itself would suffice the mind, which we know is associated with Koth, the skull. Sure. And the Holy One is called Kadesh, which implies that Koth, the head, Kadesh is a state of mind. But likewise, if you're not in a holy state of mind, then you permute the last words of Kadesh and you have the word Shod, which means a demon. And it implies that if you are not in a holy state of mind, then you are in a fallen state of mind, this scattering. And this pushes away the divine realms from you.
Amen, Yira. I would like to add to that. This is also to stress the great significance to the Yehudim, because as Yira is explaining, it all boils down to a profound unity. And Yehud means unity. And in unifying the Yehudim, the animus of the Yehudim is the unification of Yod He Vav He. And when we unify Yod He Vav He, it is only then that we unify ourselves. This is the most holy, wise principle. And so this is the animus of the Yehudim. This is the goal of the Yehudim, is unification. We are unifying Yod He Vav He to unify the universes, to unify ourselves, and to bind ourselves to Yod He Vav He, of whom we are an image of. So very, very, very crucial and important to understand. Thank you for expounding upon that, Ira.
Absolutely, and you put it perfectly. So after these Ophanim had shown me this blazing cross, they took me letter by letter and instructed me in all of these different principles. And I found these different principles to be very interesting. Like, for example, the English word fire. Why does the English word fire work? Because the letter E, ayin, is associated with shin, right? So fire, fe, is a throat, you toss something in it. I is the spirit, which associates with things that are tossed in it, cooked, and it also denotes the association with the flame. Resh is form, and ayin is actually the association with shin that allows fire to actually be a legitimate thing. I mean, Yod is there too, but ayin is really the externalization of it. So there's many key aspects to this, which then unlocks many other languages. And also in terms of gematrias, at this time, I then knew in Japanese, ichi, which is the number 1, I is Yod, 10, Chet is 8, and I is Yod, which is 10.
This is something really important that I want to mention. I'm going to reveal a very powerful higher arcanum here. So I want to mention 2 points. The first point, which is the revelation of a very high arcanum, which is that when we read in the Torah that the supernal archons scattered the languages. They scattered they divided the one holy tongue into 70 tongues. What Yira is getting at here, what he has very subtly revealed here, very implicitly revealed, is that this was not done by chance, that this was done with great supernal order. There was a very strict ordering. There was a logical method, a logical construct and method by which the holy unified tongue was divided and scattered. And that's what these divine entities were revealing to Yira. Now this is a very high arcanum, and this is why this is a very high arcanum. Because when you reach these high levels of binah, of understanding, and chokhmah, and wisdom, and you understand this hidden construct, the order, the logical order and chain by which the one holy tongue was scattered and divided, you then have the keys to understand all the languages. And what do we read about Yosef? Yosef was the highest and most powerful magician, one of the most powerful and highest magicians that ever walked earth. He was the chief magician of Mitzrayim. And when the Torah tells you that he was the chief magician of Mitzrayim, it's not joking, it's not exaggerating. We cannot even begin to explain to you what a powerful, holy grandmaster magician Yosef was. The ancient texts tell us that Yosef spoke all the 70 languages before Pharaoh. In fact, it was a prerequisite. In order to be part of the royal court of Pharaoh, you had to speak all 70 languages. And Yosef did, because he was a Grandmaster Holy Magician. That tells you right away, the royal court of ancient Mitzrayim was full of magicians. King Shlomo, we also were told, King Shlomo spoke all 70 languages. Grandmaster Holy Magician. There are some very, very lofty levels here. Powerful arcana. Now, the second point that I want to make is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gita, but I want to summarize a bit up to what we reached this point, which is that once you began the initial stages within the third stage of permuting, carving, and weighing the letters, or the divine seals, you reached a point where your third eye was opened, you ascended the spiritual universes, and when that happened, then these divine entities began to reveal to you even more holy mysteries upon the divine seals, which then allowed you to even ascend even higher. Is this correct, Yira?
Yes. There are 4 levels higher than this level, which is hard to imagine that you could even go any higher than this. I would like to touch on to what that was. So as I was explaining, they had given me a very detailed instruction on every one of these letters. And in our interview, I talked about blendings. And this is what I was talking about when I was referring to blendings, because the reality is that every one of these letters actually have these sub-attributes. You know, the letter B's associations with Aleph and Mem. And I know this to be a fact because the body is mainly made out of water. If I want to take a bath, it's in the water. Baptized in the water. Baby in the water. I'm blinking, I can assume it's water, and many other mysteries. So these were extracting principles of sound, not letters per se, but sound. And so what happened after climbing this, then and I was brought before the Holy Cheoth, the first expression, and the Ancient of Days. Before creation is first thought, before thought is first inspiration, before inspiration, the sum of all inspiration, the waters of the deep, above the spirit of Hashem. The Ancient of Days reflects his will into the creation, thus must all sleep to return to the light that emanated the sparks.
Amen. Very, very powerful. Well, fellow listeners, I have to get ready to wrap up this video here. I'm sure you guys want to hear more. But before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to just very briefly mention or just add or conclude to what has been revealed here?
Yes. After this, one who is brought before the 2 eternal witnesses, who stand before the throne room of the Ancient of Days and cast water upon all who would enter. If one asks, what is the purpose of this? They shall surely drown. This is their nature. One is in the waters of life and time. One is in the waters of thought, emotion, and inspiration. One is the house of God, the infinite expanse of finality, and the bringing together of events. This is the body. One is in the spirit of God, the infinite expanse of infinality, and the bringing together of understanding. There's one gate higher than this, which I'll leave reserved. But as stated, if any person who approaches this asks, what is the meaning of this water? They will drown. For if they truly knew, there would be no water.
I'm so happy you brought that up. So, fellow listeners, for those who are initiated, for those who truly have ecstasy, for those who are true holy, very, very high holy initiates and adepts, nothing further needs to be said here. But for those who are not initiated, I will say this. What Ida has revealed here is his seal, his own seal, and his own proof. Not that it needs to be, because he's already given you many seals, many proofs, but he's giving you the final seal and proof that indeed he is a Grandmaster Holy Magician. Those of you who know our ancient texts will more than know and understand, because in the ancient Talmud Babli, there's a very secret section where Rab Akiba, we are told, was only less than a handful of ancient grandmasters that ascended into the highest universes. And he taught his chief disciples how to do so. And we learn in Talmud Babli, Rabbi Akiva, he gives a very powerful warning to all future grandmasters who are to ascend the highest universes right before they start ascending into the real higher universes that Yida's talking about here, the forbidden gates, the forbidden universes. He states, when you come to those shiny stones, you do not say water, water. I wish I unfortunately forgot this, and I wish I had the citations at hand. I don't have the citations from memory, but for those of you who are masters and are well acquainted with our ancient holy texts, you know what I'm talking about. You've read this in the ancient Talmud. Rabbi Akiva, he says, when you go to those, when you're before those shiny stones, do not say water, water. He warns. Now all of the Mekabalim, they were puzzled by this. They said, we don't understand. There's all these metaphysical, esoteric levels to the Talmud. You got these Mekabalim that we don't understand. All these Mekabalim that we don't understand what Rabbi Akiva is talking about here. Of course, 99% of the Mekabalim don't understand, because over 90% of Mekabalim never get their third eye open, never truly ascend. Okay, as initiated as they may be. It's only when Hamishak Arizal came on the scene that he revealed that great secret of what's going on there and what that means. And Yida has also revealed that here and has given you a warning. He has not explained it to you, but he's giving you the warning. Those who are masters and grandmasters will more than know and understand what's going on here. But very, very ridiculous, extremely powerful what you have shared there, Yida. Now I want to conclude this video by stating one last very momentous thing. If there's one thing, if there's one thing you take away from this video, just one thing you take away from this video and that you understand, I want it to be this. And I want you to say, what you told me that this is the only system. Yeshua said, the path is very narrow. It's a very narrow path. It's like, it's like a camel going through a needle. It's impossible. The path is very, very narrow. What did you tell me, Yida, about this system, how unique it is, how this is the only path, this is the only way?
Shalom. And yes, it is true. There is no other way. The letters themselves were the way that God allowed himself to be revealed. It is also called the only begotten, which is the word. There is no other way. I can quote it in one way that very high-ranking Goyim had stated. I believe it was Albert Pike. He said, all truly dogmatic religions, all the scientific hopes and dreams of Swedenborg, St. Martin, the Illuminati, and others, all Masonic associations and their bodies, their pendant bodies, owe all of their symbols and all of their secrets to the Kabbalah. Everything stems from it, and everything returns to it.
Amen, amen, Yida. Beautifully well said by our powerful Grandmaster, Albert Pike. Regrettably, I must say he was a Grandmaster of Grandmasters, but beautifully well said. This is the one thing I want all you listening to take away. There's only one system. When we're speaking on Holy Magic, there is only one system, and it is the highest archetypal supernal system of all systems. Every other system of Magic is nothing but a perverse imitation of this supernal archetypal construct and system of Holy Magic. As I'm always telling you, as I told you in my other videos, every religion, every theosophy is a perverse imitation of the highest supernal archetypal theosophy, which is none other than the supernal illuminated theosophy of our ancient patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. And it's no different with Holy Magic. There's only one system, and it is the highest system, the most supernal, highest, most archetypal system, and it is the system that we have delineated and enumerated in this video. Those that have eyes to see and ears to hear will more than know and understand. Those that are wise and illuminated, truly illuminated, will more than know and understand. With that said, Shalom Weselah. And so now, I, the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, a true son of King David, a true Merovingian, state.
Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.